Any questions so far? Did it go all right?
So far, so good.
Okay. Nobody's.
I drew a sombrero on the wizard, so it came out
Oh,
okay.
I have almost zero artistic talent, which is why I'm a music teacher.
Mhm.
So, give people a minute or so here to come back. As you're coming back in, if you have questions, please feel free to just chime in. But it sounds so far like things went relatively well. All right. All right, let's see. Looks like we're just missing Kelsey, unless you're there, Kelsey, and just don't have your camera on. There we go. All right, so before we move forward, questions, comments, issues, anything I can help to address at the moment? All right, I guess silence is a good thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting anybody to master any of the stuff we're going over tonight. This is the introduction. You will have plenty of opportunities to explore and continue to practice on all of this as we move forward. But I just want to make sure you feel like you've got it. You at least have gone through the steps and know where things are. You can always refer back to this. I'll show you at the end, I did put in the Moodle what I call a can you list. And it's basically all of the things we're going through tonight, but they're all set up as can you questions. So, can you create a new sprite? Can you use the paint editor? And for each one, I've provided at least a link, if not a couple of links, to the wiki documentation for Scratch. So if you ever have a question about any of the things we're doing, you don't remember what button to push or where something's located, you can always go back to that reference, and then that'll give you a link directly to the full documentation for that particular thing. So, all right, but I'm going to keep moving ahead. So the next trick, so we've got our pretty pictures now. The next trick is to start making those pictures do stuff. We want to change the way these pictures look without going into the paint editor and literally redrawing them. So there are certain things that we want to do or add or modify to the way that these sprites look. So now we take our first step into code. So if you notice, what I've done in my screen is I'm going to focus on my T-Rex sprite here. In fact, I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. Just give him a bit more space on the stage. There we go. So what I've done then is, instead of looking in the costumes tab, I've now gone to the code tab. And the core function of Scratch is they wanted to make programming code visual. So they wanted to appeal to, rather than having to memorize a bunch of text and what order it goes in and all this, they wanted it to be very visual, very graphic, something that felt more like playing with Legos than with writing computer code. So all of the instructions in Scratch are built into these, what they call blocks. There are a couple of different types of blocks. These that have the little notch on the top and the bottom can be stacked. There are some blocks that they call them top hats that have this curve on top and then have a little notch on the bottom. And then there's a couple of them that are just flat across the bottom but have the notch at the top. And as you can probably guess, even if you haven't taken a look at it yet, those notches are the way that the blocks click together. So we are literally going to be snapping these instructions together into a sequence to help us get things to do things. That's really all code is. So the first category we're going to look at is looks, and they do color code them. So this is kind of the darker purple section. And the other nice thing is that for the most part, they've tried to put all of these instructions into plain English instead of going into computer speak. So if, for example, this dinosaur has 4 costumes, and I want to have an instruction that tells it to switch to a different costume, I look over in here on my list of looks things, and lo and behold, there are 2 of these blocks that look like what they will do is change the costume. So let's go with, I'm going to start with the next costume one because that's the simpler one. If I want to use it, I'm just going to grab it and drag it out into my build space. So this instruction, this code has now been added to this sprite, and all of the codes get connected to a sprite. So each sprite can be running its own set of instructions. Now, just having it sit there doesn't really do much for me. I want to actually run the command. The easiest way to do that while you're building is just to click on the block. So I've now dragged this here. If I just click on this block, my dinosaur goes to the next costume. If I click it on again, it goes to the next costume. Click on it again, it goes to the next one. And then because this has 4 costumes, when I click it on it again, it goes back to the first costume. So I've now coded something. I now have an instruction that tells the program when this is clicked on, move to whatever the next costume is, the next costume, the next costume. So that is the basics of the way these instructions work. So for example, the other costume one, I'm not going to connect them for now because I want them to be separate. But this one says switch costume to, and then I've got a pull down list. And when I click on the pull down, it shows me all of the costumes. So for this one, I can pick a costume. Now when I click on that, it will switch to that costume. And then it doesn't matter how many times I click on it, it will just go to that costume. But then I can click on my next costume one and cycle through. So that's the way these instructions work. So if you look through the looks instructions, the looks blocks, the first 4 allow your sprites to say things, not out loud. These are all through text bubbles. But you can either have it say something, which will be a text bubble. So it adds a text bubble there, and it comes out of my sprite, and it says hello. Or I can have it say something for just a certain number of seconds, and then that will go away. Or it has the thinking commands, and think is the same thing, it just does it as little thought dots. So this is, if you're looking to do little simple animations, this would be a really easy way to get your characters to have dialogue or to say things or so on. So that first 4 set of instructions all are about saying and thinking. We already looked at the 2 that are about costumes, switching costume, going to the next costume. You have 2 additional commands for backdrops. Now, I can put these on the sprite, even though the sprite is not the backdrop. The backdrop is the one thing that you can refer to just sort of by name. So even though I'm here on my dinosaur sprite, I could tell it to switch the backdrop to the castle I could tell it to switch to the beach. I can tell it to just go to the next backdrop. So it goes between them, or I can just use the next backdrop command. So I can put those there. If I go to the actual backdrop, I can put the code there too. So the backdrop can control itself, but the backdrop, because it is what it is, you can actually control backdrops from any sprite. So you could have a command is built into a sprite that changes the backdrop. So we've got those. Whoop, I don't want to click them. By the way, if you want to get rid of an instruction, you can either right click on it and say delete block, or you can drag the block back over into the list and then it goes away. So either way, you can get rid of blocks. You can also duplicate blocks. So if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over, you can always right click and duplicate and create copies. All right, the next two are about changing size. So I can either set the size to a certain amount. So this changes, set the size to a certain amount. So this one sets it to 100. I could say make it 200. Click on it, it goes to 200. Or this one will change the size. So it'll take whatever size it currently is and either add that percentage, or if you make the number negative, then every time you click on it, the sprite will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So you've got those two. Then the next three are all graphics effects. And there's a list of them. Color is what it says. So you can actually recolor a sprite by picking a number, and then it'll take any solid color areas of that sprite and will recolor them. The numbers go, if you're back in the paint editor, when you pulled up, if you were picking a color, all of the colors are on like a rainbow spectrum. The numbers are from 0 to 100 on that spectrum. So I think 0 is pure red, and then it works its way through the Roy G. Biv color spectrum as you go from 0 to 100. And I think when you make it to 100, you're back at pure red again. So it makes its way, oh no, I guess 100 is green. But anyway, so you can kind of play around with the numbers and figure out if you want to do that. So that's a color effect. The others distort. So there's a fisheye effect that kind of makes the thing sort of bloat. There is a whirl effect, which is like you take your sprite and grab the middle of it and start twisting it, so it starts spinning into a whirl. Pixelate turns it into low resolution pixels, like Minecraft. We've got mosaic, and that creates a whole bunch of copies and puts them into a grid. So you can do that. Brightness. This basically moves it on a spectrum from black to white. So color is just the tint, and then the brightness is the sort of moving from dark to white. So if I set it to 0, I changed it by. So if I change it to negative 100 or change it by 100, it goes all black. So you can change by a certain amount, or just like you could with size, you can set it immediately to an amount. Oh, sorry, the last one is the ghost effect. That's transparency. So if you want something to go transparent, you can set the ghost effect, and then that'll make your sprite start to go transparent. So if you want something to fade away and by kind of disappearing that way. And then you'll see the other one I've been throwing in here is the clear graphics effect. If you want to get rid of an effect and take it back to its normal, you can do that one. When you click on it, then it just gets rid of any effect that's on there. So we've got 2 related to costumes. 2 related to costumes, 2 related to backdrops, 4 related to speaking and thinking thought bubbles, 2 related to size, 3 related to graphics effects, and then the last 2 we need to worry about for tonight are show and hide, and they're exactly what they say. If I click hide, the sprite is now hidden, and you'll see it even changes here on the info screen. And then if I click show, it comes back. So if you want something to appear and disappear, you can also do that with one of these blocks. The last few blocks, the go-to layer, I'm not going to worry about layers right now. We may get into that down the road as we start to get more complex things on the screen, but I don't want to cloudy that water right now. And then anything you see that's in an oval, like these last 3, those will make more sense down the road when we start working with variables and things like that. They are not blocks. They're actually, now I can't remember the name for them, but they're basically, they're information about the sprite. So if a code needs to know something about the sprite, those show up in these oval boxes. So for right now, you can ignore those 3 and you can ignore the 2 that have to do with layering. So the next step now that you have some sprites is to get the sprites to change by using these various looks blocks. So that is our next little mini assignment here. This, as you can tell, is not going to take nearly as long as drawing the sprites. But I do want to give you a chance to now go in. If you've got multiple sprites in your test project, just pick one of them and try dragging in some of these. And again, once it's in here in the workspace, all you have to do is click on it and it will execute that command. So you can check to make sure that the command is doing what you think it's going to do. Check out the thinking, check out the saying, check out the different manipulations you can do with size and with those graphics effects. And then obviously the show and hide as well. But basically it's just doing what I did here. Drag them in, click on them, see what it works, see what happens when you change the numbers. And then we will come back after that. So it is 6:07. So just to give it a nice round number, let's do 13 minutes for this. So let's come back at 6:20. Just having taken a look at these things in the looks code. And then we've got one more topic tonight, and that will wrap things up for this evening. So take the next 13 minutes, explore the looks blocks. And as always, I will be here if you've got questions, but if not, I will see everyone back here at 6:20. All right, see you in a bit.
I have one quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
I see that everything is separated now, but if I wanted to stack them so that it could do, more than one thing, would I have to click on each separate one? Or once I click on the first one, do all the things just keep happening?
Right. Once things are connected, so like if I do a next costume and the next backdrop together, when I click on that, it doesn't matter where I click, it'll execute both of those commands.
Okay, so but what if you have like a thinking one and then a speaking one? You don't put those 2 together because then they would both happen at the same time? They wouldn't happen one after the other?
Well, what would happen if I just did the say and the think, the ones that aren't timed, that it'll just go straight to the hum because the hello happened, but it happened instantly and then went straight to the think. If you do the timed ones, then it will do them with the timing in, so it won't go to the next command. So it'll think hum for 2 seconds, and then it'll say hello for 2 seconds. So if a block has timing built into it, it will wait until that command is done before moving on to the next one.
Okay, but otherwise, if they are linked together and you click on anywhere, they happen at the same time.
Yeah. And we'll see, eventually there are ones where we can put in timing spaces if we want. So, there are ways to add in additional timing if it's not built in. But for right now, Yeah, if I clicked all of these into one big long list, if I clicked on that, it would execute all those commands in order, timing any ones that are timed, but otherwise just piling them on top of each other,
Okay,
basically.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.